Good morning and welcome to Peace Out, where we are all learning together to peace out. Boy, have I had plenty of practice this morning. Just been hit from one side or another, and I ain't even done nothing yet. It's been one crazy thing after another this morning. So I'm trying to settle myself down and get ready to come in here and talk about peace while I'm trying to find that peace myself. Hey, I'm just being real. I'm just being real. Sometimes we just get hit with stuff, right? And it's either emotional or mental, and we got to try to figure it out, and we always got to go back to the Word. And I opened my Bible to a scripture that helped me, and I'm going to be meditating on it today. But I want to stay on our theme for this week. Our theme for this week is kind of those unmentioned people that were participants in miracles, even if we don't have their name. They weren't the big ticket person in the story, right? And so this morning, and the other thing that we're talking about this week is how God is in our day to day. He's not just sitting up in the heavenlies going, someday this is all going to be over and I'll go get them. I don't know what's going on. He knows what's going on in our day to day. He knows what's going on in our lives. He knows what's going on in my crazy, fast-paced head right now. All these thoughts and questions I got in my head right now, right? And the crazy stuff that I got to do today. He knows all that, and he has not separated himself from us. He didn't just create us and just go, let's see how this turns out. He wants to walk with us. And so the stories we're looking at this week are where he's been in the day to day. And we've talked about Jesus feeding the 5,000. I don't remember what we talked about this morning, yesterday, right this second. But we're going to look at a story. We talked about Anyway, so we're talking about a story we've talked about before, and it's in 2 Kings 4. Well, we've just been right here in 2 Kings for a while, huh? Elisha's just come on the scene and blowing everybody's minds here, right? And it says, a widow of one of his fellow prophets came and said, my husband who served you is dead, and now, and I know that he feared the Lord, but now he made some large debts to try to take care of us. And now they're going to make my son slaves to pay for that, right? And so Elisha said, tell me how I can help you. And he says, tell me, what do you have in the house? And her answer tells us where her thoughts were. Her first answer, and this is what we do sometimes too. I shouldn't say we, I should say me. I do this sometimes. He says, what do you have in the house? And the first thing she said is nothing at all, except a flask of oil. She said, nothing at all. I have nothing. Have you ever been in those moments where you felt like, and the reality was, you have nothing? Maybe you don't feel like you have the strength for something, or maybe you don't have the money for something, or maybe you don't have the will for something. But we go through those times sometimes where we just feel like we got nothing. And sometimes that's our first answer. That's kind of our knee-jerk answer. What's going on? What do you have? Nothing. Do you have any peace? No, I don't have anything. I don't. And we feel wiped out. We feel shucked down, right? And her first response was nothing at all. And then she said, except a flask of oil. And Elisha said, well, you know what? Just go borrow as many empty jars as you can. You know what? It seemed silly to her. It didn't make sense. She didn't know what he was going to do. He just said, go borrow as many jars as you can from your friends and neighbors, and then go close it. Then you and your sons go in your house, close the door, and start pouring oil from that one little flask, which was probably just something real small to begin with, right? And so they did as they were told. And it said her sons, it says, brought many jars for her. She filled one after another, and pretty soon every container was full to the brim. She said, bring me another jar. And they went, there aren't any more. And then the oil stopped flowing. It filled all those jars up. I wonder what the neighbors thought. What would you think if somebody's child comes and says, hey, my mom needs an empty jar. You got an empty jar? Sure, here's an empty jar. And then you're watching these kids run through town because everything was open, but they didn't have closed windows. They didn't have air conditioning. Everything was open to everybody back then. Watching these two young men run through town, gathering up all these containers and taking them to they're going, what are they doing with all these containers? And what are they doing with mine? They didn't know that there was a miracle happening in the house down the road. They didn't know that God was fixing to bless what they participated in. They were participating in a huge miracle for this woman and her children, but they didn't know that. Did anybody say no? We don't know. We don't have all these details. Maybe somebody said, no, I don't have one, or I'm not giving you one, or don't talk to me. Maybe they had a grudge. I don't know. But the ones who willingly said, sure, here's a container. Here, I got a couple of containers. Yeah, sure, take this. They had no idea what was about to go down. Excuse me. They had no idea that God was working in her life like this, and that she was going to be able to sell that oil, wash that container, and take it back to that person. I wonder if my mom always has labels on, so I still got pots and pans with labels and that my mom put on, because when you took it to a potluck, you want to make sure you get your pan back, right? So they did they not have names on them? Were they just, well, what happened to all the containers? I mean, I got all these crazy thoughts going through my head. What happened to the containers afterwards? Did they remember who they belonged to? Did they have a big garage sale to sell them? I don't know, a big yard sale? They didn't have garages, right? But these people were actually participants in something God was doing in her life, and they didn't even know what was going on right there at that moment. And I love it. And we don't have these kids' names. We don't even have the widows' names. We have nobody's names except Elisha in this story. And we're just like, they were nobodies, so to speak. But we see God walking into their day-to-day and working a miracle for this widow, working a miracle for her sons who didn't have to go into slavery then to pay off that debt, right? They didn't have to, they were completely free of that situation, and God moved on their behalf. And the people in the city, the town that gave them the containers, participated in that blessing without even knowing it, just being generous and saying, you need a container? Here's a container. You need another container? Here, I got 3 containers. Here, yeah, I got a container. And they borrowed all these containers, and God filled every single one. He didn't waste one. The oil didn't run out one jar before they got to the last one. Just that one little flask just kept pouring, just very similar to the bread and fish. They just kept feeding and kept feeding and kept feeding and kept feeding. I want to remind myself today that God is a God of abundance. He's a God who can step into the most dire circumstances and breathe life into it, right? And let's just make it personal for us. He can step into, and say this to yourself, okay? He can step into my circumstances. He knows what's going on in my day-to-day right now, this day, what all's going on, crazy stuff already, right? He knows, and he can step in and turn it around. But they had to participate. She had to do what Elisha said. She had that one flask. Her sons gathered jars. They closed the door, and she began just filling. And they went, there are no more empty jars. They filled every single one. God worked right there in her day-to-day. And he is still working in our day-to-days today. And he is still doing miracles. And sometimes we don't even know he's doing them, right? She didn't know. She just obeyed the prophet. And she just began to pour from the same flask she'd used to make bread for her boys. From that same flask she'd used to season the pot, or to oil a pan so that the food didn't stick, or to put in the bread that she made last night. That same flask that she used every single day, God used for a miracle. Nothing is off limits to God. Nothing is off the table to God. He will use whatever we present to him today. I'm going to present myself to him today and say, God, I need a couple of miracles here. I ain't got just one. I need a couple of miracles here, right? And so, but that's the thing. He hears those cries. He meets us where we are. Elisha didn't say, I don't have a clue what to do. And he wasn't even put off by her first response. Nothing. What do you have? Nothing. I got nothing. Oh, but I one flask of oil. I do have a flask of oil. There's always a flask of oil there. There's always something there that God can use, even if it's just faith, if it's just hope, and he gives us those. He didn't leave us stranded. I love that about God. He is in our day-to-day, and he is in our day today. This day, he will show up and show out if we give him what we have in our hand. That's my goal today. And in doing that, I'm going to peace out. Hope you guys peace out too. Have a great day. I'll see you again tomorrow.